like is about Formula One, but from a business standpoint. So it's year 2 of Formula One in India. How is JP Group faring in terms of revenues? How is Bernie, the so-called puppet master? How long is he going to indulge India? All these pertinent questions are going to be answered over the next 30 minutes. And joining me on the show to deconstruct and decode the entire economics of the Indian Grand Prix is none other than India's ace driver, Karun Chandok. Thank you so much for joining us, Karun. Truly
Happy to be here, Sonali. And once again, it's time to, as you said, deconstruct everything about the Indian GP.
Absolutely. It's year 2 and a lot has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think, the initial hype from year 1 has, obviously last year I think was a hugely successful event. Following on, we spoke before the race, but it was nice to see 2 weeks later that the event lived up to the expectations.
Sure.
A year down the road now, we'll see if, this is where it starts to become crunch time.
As most of us know, Bernie, who we all know is really a marketing wizard of sorts, was in fact a second-hand car dealer. And now, instead of selling cars, he's selling Formula One to most countries in the world. And now, of course, his focus being emerging markets. What I really found intriguing is that, he doesn't have a set fee for a set country. So, for instance, I believe Monaco, correct me if I'm wrong, which is, the elitist and the most historical circuit, pays the least. So, how does Bernie really negotiate how much a country will pay? Because there is seriously no benchmark.
No, and I think a lot of it is, as you said, it depends on what else comes with it. Monaco, don't forget, is the jewel in the crown.
Right.
And I think Monaco is a very unique and very historic event. It's been running, same as the UK, same as Monza in Italy. They've been running since the 50s and 60s. Like in any other negotiation, he has a number up here, he has a number up there, and hopes he reaches somewhere in between. What is amazing is when you sit down, and I've been with him to see 3 or 4 different promoters in India, and about the race before JP obviously went through. And it was very funny because one of the first things he says in the meeting is, why do you want to do the race? And the sort of promoter looks and says, well, we want to do this. And he says, well, no, why do you want to do it? Because I'm the only one who makes big money out of the event, not you. And, he doesn't hide that fact.
Right. Another very interesting thing about, Bernie is the fact that not only does he have, countries begging for a date, to host, F1 Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But I also believe that, here again, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are only 20 scheduled races in a year. So you can't have a 21st race. And I believe there's an agreement that has been drawn between teams and, circuits.
A lot of people within the paddock argue that even 20 is a bit too much.
Yeah.
I think 17, 18 was the number that everyone preferred.
Right.
But in terms of, as you said, Bernie's got enough countries crawling out of the cupboards asking for a race.
Given the 20 race cap, how long do you think India will sustain its position in the Big 20?
We'll see. At the end of the day, as you said, is a 5-year contract. But what we're not talking about in this conversation is what is the situation in all these other countries.
Right.
Why do we not talk about say Germany being guaranteed or Hungary guaranteed for so many more years?
Yeah,
there are question marks around the calendar. So you see how it plays out over the next few years.
Right.
And a lot depends obviously on JP's side. Do they want to extend?
Absolutely.
So, you're assuming it's a one-way thing.
Sure.
So it takes 2 to tango.
Absolutely. So there you have it. There's a 20 cap race, so to speak, as of now. We have more than 10 new destinations that are begging for a date to host the Formula One Grand Prix in the near future. The question is, what happens when JP's contract with FOM gets over in 5 years? Remember, we're in year 2. And when that does happen, will India manage to sustain a place in the Big 20 race? And lastly, the big question being, will India still boast of being a Formula One country? Well, Tara Kapoor, our in-house racing enthusiast, has all those answers. Over to you, Tara.
We all know the reference of the puppet master. He's a godlike figure, wielding his power, wiggling his fingers and gleefully watching his puppets dance to his tune. So what's this got to do with Formula One, you might ask? Well, in the world of motorsports, the equation is pretty much the same.
This is Formula One.
Replace the puppet master with F1 Supremo Bernie Ecclestone, interchange the puppets with the Grand Prix circuits across the world, and the power play you're left with is identical.
Bernie and FOM have been working for 20, 30 years to divide and conquer the circuits and play them off against each other. And as long as you have one extra on a list of circuits, you can have a contest, can't you?
Selling Formula One to the highest bidder has been the strategy of F1's boss Bernie Ecclestone.
One of the newest pawns on Bernie's board is JP's Budh International Circuit in Greater Noida. All set to host the country's second Grand Prix, the Indian circuit is one of a slew of new F1 races to come up across the world. And take one look at the 2012 F1 calendar and you'll see Malaysia, China, South Korea, Bahrain, Singapore, Japan and the UAE are all F1 destinations. Include India in the fixed lot of 20 races and you'll realize that a whopping 40% of the Grand Prix across the world happen in Asia. And in order to accommodate these races, we saw the French Grand Prix get the axe, Germany and Spain are in jeopardy of losing their races, and the classic Silverstone circuit in the UK had to pull up its socks and revamp its infrastructure in order to stay in the game. Juxtapose this to a decade ago, where the races were predominantly a European phenomenon, and many questions come to mind. With the majority of the 660 million viewers still in Europe, and the fact that most of the sponsors on board have a massive presence in European nations, why the sudden shift to Asia?
Well, there's more money in developing markets, that's the truth. And also the fact that in the overall strategy of Formula One, you need to have a global strategy to get the big sponsors in. So a lot of the big companies in the world want to be in the Asian market, and so obviously we moved to Asia.
There's Thailand that's looking at coming in. It's understood to be bids from countries such as the Philippines. There's a lot of competition, and the reason for this is that these kind of countries can use Formula One to basically promote themselves in terms of driving tourism. A consequence of this is that the governments will fund the fees to host Formula One races, and this has driven the fees up a considerable amount. They're now averaging at around $27 million a year. Essentially, that keeps the fees high because it's turned Formula One virtually into an arms race when it comes to the cost of hosting it. It's priced out many of the traditional European nations.
We've seen in the last 10 years a switch to the Asian markets. I think we're going to see a switch in the next 10 years going west because the Americas, rather, north and south, are fairly developed markets, and Formula One's impact in them is less than it should be.
And in order to accommodate more races from both the North and South American continents, some Asian races will have to be cut. So the big question is, after India's current 5-year tenure is over, will it survive the cut? And going by the current state of affairs, the road ahead for India sustaining itself as a Grand Prix destination looks tough for several reasons. The first roadblock is the fact that India is the only country in Asia where the government doesn't bear the FOM fees to host a Grand Prix. This is the largest cost for any circuit owner and averages at around $35 million a year and increases by 10% annually. With the Concord Agreement capping the number of Grand Prix a year at 20, there is unprecedented demand for the F1 circus in a number of new locales around the world. And for Bernie, show him the money and you've got yourself a race. This has helped F1's revenues increase by 44% in the past 5 years, and the team's stake has accelerated accordingly. In 2001, the teams got just $164.8 million in prize money, but by 2010, this has risen to a whopping $658 million. In fact, there are already 5 new destinations, namely Russia, South Africa, Mexico, Argentina and Thailand, waiting in the wings, and these challenges are going to get harder and harder for JP to battle without funding from the government.
They had an estimated sale of 100 crores last year. Okay, their expenses would have been about 70 crores, for instance. So they made a 30 crore profit only on the running costs. Now you take the fees, which are 250 crores. So you take 250 minus the 30, they're still down 220 crores. I think the government should take it as a responsibility to support this. I don't see the reason why would anybody, any privateer want to bleed himself to death.
I don't think there is a single circuit on the Formula One calendar that makes huge profits. Okay, out of Formula One. Okay, the expenses and the costs are pretty high, and I don't think they really make profits out of this one event.
The other disconcerting factor for motorsport in India is the fact that circuit owner JP is in it for the bigger picture. The company has gone all out to establish itself as an infrastructure behemoth, has ensured escalation of land prices in Greater Noida, and be top of mind when it comes to creating world-class real estate, all of which will hit a pinnacle in the next 5 years. And given the fact that most circuits only manage to break even after they hit the 5-year mark, for a company like JP that has no real interest in motorsport, they're quite likely to finish their 5-year contract, make back their money, wave their hands and say thanks for the ride.
Generally we feel that the circuit is not only about Formula One, it is about other events also. So after this year, where after the race we are also holding World Superbike and other national races. It's too far to think beyond 5 years.
Businesses don't come much racier than Formula One. And love him or hate him, Bernie and his management have built a model that is unquestionably successful for them, where demand overwhelmingly exceeds supply.
Well, is it a 5-year fad or is India really serious about motor racing? On that note, we're taking a short break, but coming up on the other side, we're going to take a look at the Indian Grand Prix business model, more importantly, how JP is faring in the larger scheme of things. Stay tuned.